I got interested in the subject of long-lasting enterprises, Dirgha Ayush, because I found a lot of Alpa Ayush companies coming up and young people getting excited by organizations that are being set up to die like moths around the light. I'm not criticizing all of them because short life is not wasted. Swami Vivekananda died at 32. So did Srinivas Ramanujam. But we need the Einsteins and the Rabindranaths also who live a long life. And an economy is built on people with long life. And so the question of what makes, I have lucky or unlucky, depending on how you look at it, that I've worked for two long life organizations. One is Hindustan Lever and one is Tata's. Out of the locally set up companies, probably Tata is amongst the oldest. I will hesitate to say it is the oldest. And I have studied what it is that it takes to make a long-lasting organization. I've written some books also on the subject. But your question was, what are the 2 or 3 things that distinguish them? The first thing is they care about people. I went to 6 companies. I wrote to 10 CEOs saying, I'm doing this research with a management institute. Would you cooperate? And I chose companies which came up after I began my career. I didn't choose Tata for obvious reasons. I didn't choose Godrej. I didn't choose Birla. I chose companies that came up. When I started my career, these companies didn't exist. So I went to Marico. I went to Biocon. And so on and so forth. I went to TCS, which didn't exist when I began my career. 6 of them agreed to participate. And the 3 things that we found, common amongst all the 6. Number 1, they cared for people. Now that has multiple dimensions. You can write a book on that itself. People includes employees, vendors. What I think Mr. Dr. R.P. Banerjee was saying this morning about mother
That's right.
intuition, it resonated with me because that's what I found out of my research. They cared for people. And the marker that I found most stunning, even for a guy who's been around for a long time and can be cynical, is 6 CEOs whom I interviewed said they spend between 20 to 35% of their time on people matters. 20 to 35. Not on AI, not on long-term strategy, but on people matters. The details are in the books and I won't go into that. The second thing they stated was they are having to learn and relearn constantly how to do balancing short-term and long-term, because you have to do both. You can't do one or the other. This again resonated with the mother aspect that spoke about this morning by Dr. Banerjee. Mothers are the most remarkable example of balancing. They don't balance, they do both. They expand their time. Because I've never seen a mother, I've got my daughters-in-law, they're managing both. They look hassled with the short term because the child is scrapping, doing all the things that children are supposed to do. But they're also dreaming. Will she become an artist? She drew this line. Will she become a writer because she wrote this essay in school? So balancing short and long term simultaneously. That's the second aspect. The third is what we call critical thinking. Now, if you go to educationists, they all have different definitions of critical thinking. My definition of critical thinking is, can you see unobvious alternatives? Can you be a geologist and an astronomer at the same time? So what does that mean? Imagine that you have sent an astronomer and a geologist to the moon or to Mars, and you told them, take in your backpack all the instruments that you require. As soon as they land, the geologist will step out of the spacecraft. What will he or she do? Kurpi nikalega, start digging. Because the question that is driving a geologist, or even often a physicist, is what is inside this? The astronomer will step out and look up and say, what is this all a part of? They are very different answers. And you need both the answers if you want to create a long-living institution. If you will allow me a practical example that I have seen during my stint in Tata's,
Sure.
to make this point about astronomy and geology. They are not just talking points or philosophical points. In the director's lunchroom one day, we were all very excited. TCS was having an IPO. This is back in 2003 or thereabouts. And the merchant bankers were telling us, you're going to get 800, next week was 850, 900, 950. And then one day they said you could get up to 1,000. And I was younger and less contemplative than, say, Ratan Tata, who was my boss at that time. And I said, boss, go for it. 1,000 kya, let's even try 1,050. He said, but have you thought about leaving something on the table for the retail investor? At what price would you have left something on the table for the retail investor? I said, yeah, what are you thinking about retail investor? I want all the bucks. American way of doing business, don't leave anything on the table. Finally, after a discussion, we priced it at 900, I think. And retail investors made money on that, even in the first year. Today, you buy it at 900, the retail investor finds it's at 600. And this is the difference. He was thinking of what is this a part of? And why will it last for a long time? Will people be happy and grateful to Tata or TCS in this case? And I was thinking of take all the cream, baad mein dekha jayega. So 3 things to summarize. People, critical thinking, long and short term. Sorry, long answer to a short question.
That's okay. Yesterday you were, very good with your one-liners. Today you were yesterday you were very good with your one-liners. Today you are as good with your longer explanations. Very anecdotal. You talked about people as assets. Actually, yesterday Arun Mayer also talked about the incapability of Indian corporates to look at people as assets. They see them as depreciating assets rather than as appreciating assets. That's a new, idea that I came across yesterday. So people as assets, you're a great example yourself because you worked with companies which have endured. So you endure as a brand, as an individual, so do these companies. If you do a global, if I zoom out from the Indian context and you do a global review, we have seen that there's a decadal shift in companies, there's a decadal shift in companies. Am I audible? Just up the audio a bit at the PCR level. So, there's a decadal shift when we look at companies. From energy sector, we moved to technology, and in technology domain, we have moved from pure play, real estate companies and technology domain to AI. And now look at AI also, we are ending the year with the possibility of an AI bubble. So there's uncertainty. And in the domestic context, I gave you the global context. In the domestic context, we got so excited about the startup dream. And, numbers might vary, but we're looking at a 50% wastage or 50% death rate. So in that sense, we are already living in a very, very uncertain VUCA world where only certainty is uncertainty. So what is the trajectory for global companies and Indian companies in terms of trying to aspire for a larger and enduring entity?
I'm not one of those who believes that you must have a universal number, irrespective of which industry you're operating in. If you're a media company, you'll have 90% attrition or 80%, very, very high.
You're just about there.
About there.
No, I wish there were more players, so there would be greater attrition.
But I think if you look at nature, every species has its own attrition rate. Fruit flies last one day. They are not useless. They have great uses in science, in laboratory work. Tortoises, I once went to the Calcutta Zoo and found a tortoise which was reported at that time to be living at the time of Siraj-ud-Dawla. I considered it a venerable tortoise. Ki bhai, tumne Siraj-ud-Dawla ko dekha hai. Tell me what happened. So there are multiple species. In the same way, there are multiple companies. Think of each company as one of the genetic mutations that nature has created. What I think is important is that within that species, you should have a lower attrition rate of the physical and the productive. I'm not talking of attrition rate by keeping old fruit flies on forever and ever. In fact, I was telling AKB this morning that the Indian economy is growing, but our total factor productivity, I think the young people here will understand what is TFP. If you don't, please ask your professor when you go back. Is not growing as much, under 1%. In China, grew at 3.5%. So that gives a kicker to the GDP growth. And in the same way, companies must be increasing total factor productivity, apart from investing in assets and so on. And people is the one that gives you the total factor productivity.
You know, since you talked about total factor productivity, organizations are also finding it very hard. And we had a conversation yesterday when you were sitting on stage with Barun, talking about the new generation of people, their work ethic being very different. And in that context, I also want to bring in what's happening as far as contemporary India is concerned. I hope I'm audible. So, a lot of factors that we talk about when we talk about present contemporary times. We're looking at technology shocks, geopolitical shocks. Every young person has woken up to Trump tariffs. We're looking at supply chain disruptions. In that context, are we overestimating the current turbulence as compared to the turbulence we have seen in yesteryears because there is a lack of context here? Or do you think these will be remarkable changes going forward?
I think we are terribly overestimating.
Okay.
Short answer.
Okay. Okay. So you believe that these will pass too?
Everything in the world will pass. This planet has existed for billions of years here, before you and I and economists came into existence. The point is this. Things are changing very rapidly, no argument. Exponentially, no argument. But the tools with which you're coping with that change are also increasing exponentially. The gap is constant.
Okay.
It's the gap that matters. So, if my grandfather would wait at the bullock cart, to wait for his son to arrive from somewhere else in the bullock cart yard, he would wait maybe hours or days. Today, my son looks at internet and he keeps track of where the planes are flying. The tools have also changed. I think we're forgetting to emphasize the gap. And I believe that change has always been tectonic because the nature of change is something that you contextualize to now. I remember when I was a kid, growing up here in Calcutta, my grandfather was in the village in Tanjore. My dad used to take us periodically for visiting the grandparents. And he would tell me, this is my recollection, I was only 8 or 9 years of age. He said, you know, when I was your age, my father, so I'm now going to my great-grandfather, whom I've never met, took me from this place to that place because something called a railway engine was being commissioned. It is a big black monster which was putting out smoke. And they say it will go from here to Madras in 8 hours. I don't know how you people are going to live your life. Thank God I have finished my term. I'm saying the same thing to my grandson. Except I'm not talking of it.
So are you in a way saying that we make a big hullabaloo?
Absolutely.
Okay.
No, but
I think that's
right.
wise for a lot of young people out there.
I think I must tell young people, be strongly influenced and impacted by the change of technology, but don't listen to this excessive bullshit of saying, oh, the world has never changed. AI is going to take away all the jobs. This is the biggest load of rubbish.
So it's quite consoling, sir, that, if I may add,
Sorry?
that it's quite consoling that you're not, playing the doomsday. You're saying that things are...
Well, it depends on what age you are, you see.
No, I'm at the cusp,
Young people may say, this guy is going to be dead and gone, but he's telling us all the wrong things.
Yeah, no,
But I'm telling you, I have, and there are people of my sort of age group.
No, but on a serious note, sir, I think, it's important to also look at, while there is overestimation and media headlines, we scream headlines, that's one of our failings, also strengths probably. But the fact of the matter is that, the disruption that has happened at the start of the year with one individual, so to say, reimagining the entire global order, in my lifetime as a journalist for about 4 decades now, I haven't seen that kind of disruption. I'm not calling it good, bad, ugly. But fact of the matter is that the established global order, change is welcome and it leads to evolution and, in many cases. But here in this case, don't you think, the fear of established global norms being given a go by one individual is a real threat?
The global now has been disturbed by one individual.
That's
your
right.
question?
I mean, we're talking about Trump and the way, and the global institutions.
It's not the first time. In my lifetime it's happened. I was a young kid, except that at that time, when Hitler took over the world, what happened?
Yeah, so we
I'm
have the
not
comparison.
equating Hitler and Trump.
We have the comparison, that's
I
it.
want my US visa to be safe. But for God's sake,
Is it due for renewal?
Yeah.
let's not sort of overestimate these things.
Yeah,
When
okay.
Alexander came and met Porus on the banks of the Indus River, was he not upturning the world? So throughout history, you'll find that some bloke was there who was upturning the world. The question of whether it is A or B can be argued.
There's a connected question, sir. In this context, we said we live in a very uncertain world. And what is the role of governments, in pushing businesses? America has for long been known as pushing its businesses, something now India is doing little, reluctantly. And, the gentleman earlier on this seat talked about the bureaucracy being a, problem. So should, governments actually push businesses to make them more enduring, make them more profitable? There's a debate globally about the role of politics in building capital as an institution. In the Indian context, how we are placed today. There's a massive churn against capital. It's being viewed in a certain manner, which may not be always palatable to capital's growth. And wealth creators are also seen in a certain respect. While as we have the American example, we have the EU example, where they're pushing their businesses, openly advocating them as the solution, building their consumers, building their top line and bottom line.
It's very easy to sit and pontificate on how government should respond and do things. I don't want to do that because it costs me nothing. If I was a secretary to a particular ministry, my answer would be different. But I want to take one example from our own history. When this country was becoming independent, and I was too young at that time to understand what's going on, but later on we've all done the reading, they said we need a constitution. And if you see what they did, they got the constitutions from all over the world, took the best that they could. They appointed a father figure who was controversial in his own right to go through these along with a group of very erudite people. And they developed a constitution. But very, very important is they developed a preamble to the constitution. And for me, what this tells me, the preamble is philosophical. The constitution is putting out policy. And then comes the practice. The same constitution was implemented differently during the time of Nehru, Mrs. Gandhi, and now. Everybody swears by the same book, but they're doing different things to the media world. And since I'm sitting and talking to two media people, if I say Hiren Joshi to you, it means something. Not to these youngsters here, but to you it means something. Why? The young people who are interested to know the biography of Hiren Joshi can talk to.
Everybody's going to go home and Google Hiren Joshi now.
So I'm telling you.
And they may not be much available.
Whereas you look at industrial policy resolution 1951, industrial policy 1956, and every 20 years, new secretaries come and put new rules, new bandhans. What I am advocating, taking a leaf from the constitution, is it's time India needs a philosophy which defines what the government's role is. I'm fed up of governments trying to tell you what to do. You can't be daddy, mummy to your children till they are 80 years old. This is what our government does. They want to tell people who are 75 years old how to lead their lives. Let them alone. Create a philosophy which says we need enterprises that are long-lasting. We need enterprises that are, I'm giving you illustrations rather than telling you what it should contain. We need enterprises that do good to society. We don't have to be putting 2% CSR, let them do 10. You know, when CSR came in Tata's, we calculated, we were already doing 5%. We said, wow, there's a cost saving. We now have to give only 2%. This is that phase of controls and so on we have been through. There's no point debating and discussing it. But I think if we can develop an enterprise philosophy, which is I call the equivalent of the preamble to the Constitution, and enterprise, and I'm not saying industrial manufacturing, enterprise. Business has been groomed and trained and educated. Children, listen, young people here, you're trained to make businesses efficient. But nobody trains you to make them effective. And efficiency and effectiveness are two different things. They are not the same. Effectiveness has the mother instinct. Efficiency has the do more out of less. And since we are at the end of our conversation, I want to give a metaphor because I'm really interested that all these below 30s are sitting here, below 25s are sitting here. You take music as a metaphor. You go and see a Western classical music philharmonic orchestra. Everybody will be sitting seriously and various 100 people will come and sit down. They'll have a score sheet. When the maestro comes, everybody will clap. And then magical music flows for the next so much time. You see outwardly discipline. But internally, you know that there has been great creativity. Creativity is encapsulated within discipline. You're telling me to shut up?
That's for us, not for you.
Not you, us.
No, I will shut up.
No.
I think that's fair enough.
Yeah.
But you look at an Indian classical music, there'll be hardly 5 guys there. They'll saunter onto the stage.
That's right.
They seem to talk to each other through their instruments. Most often, they don't even have a score sheet. You see tremendous creativity and relationships, but there's great riyaz behind it. What you see outwardly is creativity, inside you see discipline. So discipline is inside and creativity outside, or creativity outside, discipline inside. Makes a big difference. And this is the difference between effectiveness and efficiency.
One last question. I know we're running, short on time. India is witnessing a robust civil society. At least there's an attempt at that. And capital is being seen, deficient on the social contract. Do you think companies, there are few today, honorable ones like the one you mentioned and where you worked, largely the social contract is, a missing plank. That's how the society looks at capital. Do you think companies that need to endure longer, one of the key pieces to address and be consistent with that is social capital, social construct?
Listen, I'm saying companies that last long have no choice but to engage with the social construct. If you don't engage with the social construct, you won't last long. So the question is, do you want to live in Delhi and live till the age of 90 or not? That's it?
It's okay, carry on.
Oh, I thought she's coming to assault me.
No, I almost fell in love with you. I went weak in my knees.
Thank
Thank you.
Yes.
Sorry, I have slight vertigo
all right,
sometimes,
all right.
and my apologies.
You go
But
ahead, please.
I saw a handsome man, and I just wanted to kind of buckle under that charm.
You could finish, sir.
could,
We
yeah,
still have time.
Yeah.
Go ahead, sir.
I think
No, I think we-
hearing Sudha makes me say, please send this video clipping. I'll show it to my wife that somebody thinks I'm handsome.
So before I wind up, I eavesdropped on a morning breakfast conversation that our Gopalakrishnan and Gurcharan Das were having on what makes an enterprise long-lasting, and we were comparing it to Germany's Mittelstand companies, where there are companies, which are as old as 300 years, 400 years. So in that context, for the young people, once again, I have to ask you, what differentiates between a company which is long-lasting versus companies, the startups essentially today, as you were referring to, with shorter vision, lot of capital, but undeniably, low on patience, cannot go beyond 10 years, don't have a long-term runway or a long-term horizon. What should they learn from these companies?
Well,
how can they have a long runway?
Your definition of startup itself, I disagree with.
Okay.
Nowhere is it written. No law of physics states that startups should be having a lot of capital, should be dying within 10 years. The fact that we are practicing that is a separate matter, and I think that's the subject of the next panel discussion.
It is, yes.
In my lifetime, these companies were started as startups. Biocon, Marico. They've lasted 50, 60 years, and from all I can see, they will last quite some time more. They didn't go and engage. They were disciplined about capital allocation, total factor productivity, all the mumbo-jumbo that you're taught in your B school. So it is not a given. The fact that some guys are doing it and they are in a hurry is a matter of their personality and their approach to it.
But there are more of them in hurry today.
In?
There are more of them who are in hurry today.
No. If you give too much money to a family, at some stage the family from building businesses starts to denude. Gurcharan was giving us an example over breakfast. You're giving them lots of money with the caveat that I want the returns in 5 years. And I think the wrong incentives. Why should we Americanize everything? I don't understand. Wasn't Tata a startup in 1868? Wasn't Marico a startup in 1981? And people in those days when Marico went with the public, even Biocon, Kiran Mazumdar and I were playing golf, and she said,
these are great examples.
Be a friend, buy 50 shares. I said, ठीक है यार, दोस्ती के लिए कर लेंगे. That's how Biocon began. So we forget all this. Now that they are multi-billion-dollar corporations, we think, and we think of the new startup. There are some startups. You know, India has 100 or 108, I've forgotten, what is it called? Unicorn. 3 of them make profit. Now maybe it's become 5. I don't know.
I mentioned 50% wastage in the overall startup ecosystem.
30%?
50% wastage in the overall startup ecosystem.
I think we need startups. Let's make no mistake. I'm delighted that Indian youngsters are thinking of startups. I'm delighted that their facilities are very good. But for God's sake, let's not think India's problems will be solved by startups.